Matthew Stuckey here, and I wanted to make a quick video giving you 3 common myths of the religion or philosophy of Taoism. 3 common myths of the philosophical system of Taoism. Now, myth number 1 is this, that Taoism is not that common. It's just very rare. And so, if you tune into our ministry, you might wonder why we've made so many videos and talked about Taoism so much. And you might think, this isn't even a big thing. But I would say that's actually quite a big myth. And I want you to realize part of the confusion comes because it's really hard to determine how many people you would actually call as Taoists. Because what happens with these kind of Eastern philosophical systems is they're known as syncretic religions, meaning that you can worship one thing while being also another religion at the same time. For example, you could be Buddhist and Taoist at the same time. And many people that are Buddhist are also Taoist as well. They practice those philosophical systems. So it's not really like the Bible where it's like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. But they accept you being part of a couple different philosophical systems, or several. There's really kind of no limit. And so that's kind of part of the confusion, because if you look at Taoism on charts of the most common religions, they're not going to appear there, except they're going to appear under Chinese traditional religions. And so they are one of those, and how you really determine how many people are part of it, it's hard to tell. But I would say hundreds of millions of people actually follow Taoism to some degree. But just to give you some kind of proofs that Taoism is pretty common, actually. Their book, the Tao Te Ching, is actually the second most translated book ever. The second most translated book ever, behind only the Bible. And so being the second most translated book ever, well, that's definitely very common. Above the Quran, above scriptures of other religious systems, above any literary works of art. It's the second most translated book ever. So that definitely shows that it is actually pretty common, this philosophical system. How strongly people believe in this philosophical system, that is up for debate. However, their biggest sacred scripture is the second most translated book. The other thing is this, the movie Star Wars is based off of Taoism. And so that's something that, a lot of people probably aren't aware of, but Star Wars, watching it as an American growing up in the U.S., it's an entertaining movie. I enjoyed it as a kid and everything like that. And I always took it as something that was just kind of fake and it wasn't really real. Of course this stuff can't really be true and stuff like that. And yet the movie Star Wars is actually based on the philosophical system of Taoism. Now, one thing I'll say is this, that people who are very strict Taoists would listen to that statement and they would basically kind of criticize Star Wars a little bit. And the reason why is because although Star Wars is based off Taoism, they do get some things wrong. For example, in Star Wars, the ultimate goal is to, get rid of the dark side. However, in Taoism, you actually need both sides, both the good and the bad. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. So it's not actually the goal to get rid of evil, because evil and good are basically, intertwined, okay, which we'll talk about here. But Star Wars is based off the philosophical system of Taoism, and you might say, man, that the fights and all this, using the Force and everything like that. But if you've ever paid any attention to Chinese martial arts, and Chinese martial arts is very much based on a similar sort of system, because Star Wars is based off of the philosophical system of Taoism. Of course, there is crossover with other Eastern philosophical systems, but Taoism is what it is based off of. And another thing that shows that it's actually very common is, you say, I've never heard of Taoism, but I'm sure all of you have seen that circle of the yin and the yang, where you have the black and the white on different sides, and you've got that curved line. And in the black side, you've got this little white circle, and on the white side, you've got this little black circle, the yin and the yang. And so that is actually with Taoism. That's where it comes from. Of course, as a kid, I just thought it was a cool little drawing, cool little picture, but it actually comes from Taoism. So myth number 1 is that Taoism is not that common. It's actually a lot more common than you realize, and people that, love the movie Star Wars are subtly being influenced by this philosophical system. Myth number 2 is this, that in Taoism, with that yin and the yang, with the black and the white, that the black and the white are opposed to one another, that the black and the white are against one another, that the bad and the good are against one another. But that's actually not the case. See, in Taoism, the black and the white are both necessary to complete the whole. And so basically they are intertwined, they intersect with one another. That's why you see the white circle on the black side with that curved line. There's that little white circle in the section with the black, and there's that little black circle in the section of the white. And what Taoism teaches is there can be no good without bad. And so good and bad are basically necessary things. You can't have good without bad. You can't have bad without good. So there's really no bad. There's really no good. They're actually both necessary. They're actually the same. And so, yes, that's contradictory, but Taoism has no problem with things being contradictory. And I'm not just saying that to criticize their philosophical system, but they would say, yes, there are contradictions. That is okay, actually. And so good and bad are not opposed to one another in that yin and the yang, but they actually complete one another. Day and night, they complete one another. Male and female, order and chaos. These are some of the things where they would say you cannot have one without the other. And so basically, they're two sides of the same coin. You can't have that coin unless you have both. And so in that yin and the yang, the black and the white are not actually against one another. They actually complete one another. So in the system of Taoism, even though they believe that they are the way and the true religion, they say that all these other false religions were actually necessary to bring about everything that has actually happened in this world. And so those systems are not necessarily like a bad thing that we should not want them, but they're actually necessary to bring us about to our present state. And they would say that there's really no such thing as being a sin or something, because sin or being, evil or a moral law, because they don't believe in a moral creator. They believe that basically a Big Bang sort of beginning, and basically the rules are governed by the laws of nature and things such as that. So they don't believe in a creator God, but they believe in this overriding Taoist system and this mystical philosophical idea, but they do not believe that the black and the white are opposed to one another and that they're fighting one another. They actually complement one another and are basically one and the same in their teaching. So myth number one is that Taoism is not that common. Taoism is actually pretty common. Myth number two is that the black and the white are opposed to one another in that drawing of the yin and the yang, but it's actually showing you that they complete one another and they intersect and they're essentially the same thing. Myth number three is this, that Taoism was created by Laozi. That Taoism was created by Laozi. There's many pronunciations I've heard of this man's name. Obviously, I'm not a native Chinese speaker, but Laozi is one of the pronunciations, and he is credited by most people to having created Taoism. What's interesting in Chinese philosophical systems is another common system it was created or is known or represented by Confucius, Confucianism. Confucius never claimed to be the originator of his beliefs. He said he was basically bringing back traditions that had been kind of forgotten, kind of misplaced, and he was bringing them back to being popular, but he did not claim to be the creator of his philosophical system. Well, it's actually the same with Laozi, although a lot of people don't really realize that when he wrote the book, the Tao Te Ching, he did not claim to be the originator. He is basically gathering together this old philosophical system and bringing it back to the forefront and making it popular. But you can actually see that this philosophical system predates Laozi. And so some of the examples of this are that in the Tao Te Ching, which, there's kind of a debate about when this was written, between the 8th to 3rd century BC, but in the Tao Te Ching, he talks about the Tao Masters of Antiquity in chapter 15 of the book. So he refers to the Tao Masters of Antiquity, and what he's referring to is the fact that there were people that were already practicing this. And so basically, he wasn't taking something brand new, but he was taking something that already existed, and he brought it back to popularity, and he wrote the book, the Tao Te Ching, and it became very popular and very widespread, but he's not actually the originator, nor did he ever actually claim to be the originator. And not only that, but, the Yellow Emperor, who Huangdi, Huangdi, if that's how you pronounce it, who was said to be between 2697 and 2597 BC before Christ, was actually associated with the origin of Tao as well and associated with that philosophical system. Now, of course, I'm not claiming that every single date is correct. Obviously, things were not written down perfect historically. I believe that date would actually have to be inaccurate when you look at the biblical flood, which was approximately 4,400 years ago. But I would say that, and whether or not he fully existed or not, there's a lot of debate about these historical figures because, quite honestly, history was not really written down that well. The Greek Empire was pretty much the first ones, with Herodotus, known as the father of modern history, who really, wrote everything down. And that's why we know that the Bible is the best source of knowledge, because the Bible is pure and is perfect. So whether that yellow emperor existed or not, it's said that, in the middle of the 3rd century, or 3rd millennium BC, between around 2500 BC, which that date could be off of when this person actually existed, that he was associated with the Tao. However, we do know from chapter 15 of the Tao Te Ching, written by Laozi, that he does talk about these Tao masters. So he did not claim to originate this system. And so 3 myths of Taoism are this. Number 1, that it is not a very common system. That's actually not true. Star Wars is based off of it. Everybody knows the yin and the yang. And the Tao Te Ching is the 2nd most translated book. Myth number 2, that the black and the white and the yin and the yang are actually opposed to one another. They actually complement one another in their philosophical system. And myth number 3 is that Laozi was the creator of Taoism. He actually made it popular, but he didn't actually create it. Now, I want you to understand this, though. Taoism is a wicked philosophical system. I haven't really said anything against their philosophical system in this video because I'm just giving information, but Taoism claims to be the way. And they claim that they're a syncretic religion and you can be Taoist in something else as well. However, they still claim to be the way. And here's the thing, Jesus Christ claimed to be the way. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. And if you follow the way of the Tao, not only will you destroy your life, but you're going to send yourself to hell forever because you rejected the actual way, which was Jesus Christ, who died and paid for all of our sins. Thank you, and God bless.